And here is your host.
Good morning, Las Vegas, and welcome to A Healthier Tomorrow, your trusted source for health education, community insight, and practical guidance to help you and your family thrive. I'm your host, Will Rucker, and we have got an absolutely fantastic program for you today, especially if you've got kids, teens, or students in your life as we are still in the beginning of a new school year. You know, when we talk about preparing our kids for success, we usually think about academics, reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? We think about the school supplies, the extracurricular activities, all of those things. But what about health knowledge? What about life-saving skills? What about understanding how to be safe and strong in the real world in addition to in the classroom? So that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. First up, we'll talk about chronic cardiometabolic conditions like diabetes and cholesterol. You might be thinking, well, isn't that an adult problem? No, not anymore. With the rising rates of childhood obesity and sedentary lifestyles, kids today are facing risk factors earlier than ever. So what should students know to protect their health and their families? We'll get into the basics of prevention, healthy habits, and of course, how young people can be powerful advocates for wellness at home. Then we'll dive into some life-saving skills because emergencies don't wait until adulthood. We'll ask what essential skills do kids and teens need to learn. And then we'll switch gears, quite literally, and talk about some pedestrian and bike safety. E-bikes are everywhere now. I actually had the chance to ride one when I was in D.C. last week. That's pretty cool. But how safe are they? And what do we need to know before we hop on one? So we'll talk about helmets and traffic laws and how to stay safe on Nevada roads, all that good stuff. So whether you're a parent, grandparent, educator, or just someone who cares about our community's future, this episode is for you. So let everyone know that A Healthier Tomorrow is on the air. Text the group chat, put it on your Facebook page, tweet it out. I don't know all the things folks are doing nowadays, but whatever way you communicate, let folks know because this conversation is too important to keep to yourself. Now, before we dive into the program, I want to share a story that I think can teach us a lot, particularly in the times we're living in today. It's called The Village That Slept Through the Storm. There was once a small village nestled between two quiet hills. It wasn't famous and it wasn't fancy, but it was peaceful. Children played in the fields, elders sipped tea on porches, and life carried on in that ordinary, beautiful way. Now, every few decades, a great storm would blow through the valley. It didn't come often, but when it did, it was fierce. The wind would rattle windows, trees would fall, and families would huddle together hoping it would pass. But one year, something strange happened. A traveler came to town, not with a warning, but with a whisper. He didn't shout about the storm. He simply showed people how to reinforce their homes. He taught the children where to go if the wind picked up and planted trees in a new pattern that shielded the hillside just enough. Then he left. No fanfare, no thunder. And wouldn't you know it, that year the storm did come, but it passed overhead and the village slept through it. There were no broken windows, no panicked midnight runs, just rain tapping gently on rooftops and a quiet morning after. Some people said, maybe the storm wasn't that bad this time. Others said, well, maybe we just got lucky. But those who remember the traveler, they knew. The real story wasn't about the storm. It was about the village that didn't fall apart. So with that thought in mind, I'd like to welcome today's guest, none other than Dr. Jerry Reeves. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
I am so good and so glad that you are here for A Healthier Tomorrow. So before we dive into the content, I'd love to learn a little bit more about you. So tell me and our listening audience about your background and how you got your start.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation to be here. I'm glad to be representing Clark County Med Society and our House of Healthcare in Nevada. I'm a pediatrician, and I grew up in southeast Texas on the Gulf Coast in the city that oils the world, Port Arthur, Texas, where we had lots of humidity and lots of storms and tornadoes. And During my early childhood, it was also a time that Russia had just gotten Sputnik and was beating us, and then we had the Cuban Missile Crisis, and everybody was afraid of possible nuclear attack.
Wow,
So our practice sessions to get under tables and to get in protected spaces was not only about tornadoes and hurricanes, but about watching out for nuclear bombs. I knew early that I wanted to be a doctor, and went to Baylor to college and med school, and then was in the Air Force as a pediatrician, did my training there, and was in Northern California. This was during the Vietnam War, and I remember arriving at the base, and long lines of young men were getting on a big C-5 airplane to fly to Vietnam, and we were then the place that Vietnam injury patients returned, and that was my introduction to adulthood, was taking care of children and screening people who were returning from Vietnam War to be stabilizing them. Spent a career in the Air Force, and then after retiring from Air Force in Germany, moved to Las Vegas in April of '89. Wow. And on arriving here, I was part of Southwest Medical Associates, a large multi-specialty medical group here in town, and still did pediatric. I was not just a general pediatrician, but pediatric hematology oncology. So my career was taking care of children with blood diseases and cancer and really serious medical conditions. And my children, my two daughters, would go to the cancer camp, as we called it, Parents for Heroes, during summers, and say they were totally immersed in my career as well. And my daughter is a geriatrician, runs the geriatrics program at University of Utah. So there are a lot of similarities, as I'm learning now that I'm older, between children and seniors. and so a lot of my work now really is developing pathways for students, both in junior high, high school, and college, to pursue health-related careers. And a lot of our work is in that domain, and we work with medical students and college students who are pursuing health careers, which we need a lot more of in Nevada.
Absolutely. So from Germany to Texas to California, from Baylor University to the Air Force, I mean, you've seen quite a lot.
I've sampled a lot of pieces of healthcare and the way healthcare is organized and delivered. It turns out that in Europe, well, they don't do healthcare delivery the way we do it in the U.S. And I learned a lot of lessons from that experience at headquarters for Air Forces in Europe that have been very valuable in my career after retiring from Air Force and moving around here in the United States.
Yeah, so you've probably also seen kind of a lot of changes in the conditions that impact people as well, I would imagine.
I was just talking with one of my colleagues who we were both remembering that when we were in school and college, it was rare for there to be diabetes or obesity. And it was a reportable case if a child was morbidly obese when I was in my early pediatrics practice. And now the prevalence of diabetes is 15 times as much as it was early in my career. And so it's dramatic what has happened with Americans' susceptibility to disease and early death that is avoidable. But there are a lot of forces that drive us to to the results that we are getting.
Yes, there are, and that's something I definitely want to dive into. But I'm curious as to when you were in elementary school and the things that you were thinking about. What were some of the conditions back then that you did see instead of the obesity or diabetes?
I remember two of my classmates and playmates in my neighborhood had polio, and they had paralysis of their arm from polio. And I remember as a child going to get my polio vaccination, and it was very much on our minds. My brother-in-law, as a young teenager, lived in an iron lung for a while, and fortunately he recovered from polio. But we forget how devastating these diseases were. My sister developed whooping cough as an infant and really suffered brain damage from the low oxygen levels in her brain from whooping cough. So we think these things are background noise, but they are not. I early in my career as a pediatrician, I can't tell you how many children I took care of who had what we called H-flu pneumonia, Haemophilus influenza pneumonia, a bacterial infection of the brain, the meninges, so meningitis. And several of these kids passed away from that. Now we give shots for 2-month-olds to protect them from that, and it's really rare for a child to have meningitis on a pediatric ward today. That's so dramatically different from what my experience as a pediatrician was.
Yeah, wow. And I'm just thinking back, and I won't say, my age on the air, but when I was in school, chickenpox was a thing. And I remember getting chickenpox and staying home from school, and I remember telling my mom, I'm scarred for life, because I was just covered in these things, and I was so miserable. And they stick me in the tub and they cover me with this like salve stuff that was awful, and it was not pleasant. But now kids don't even know what chickenpox is. It's like, what? Yeah. It's kind of like polio for me. I didn't have any experience with that. So things really have changed thanks to the wonders of vaccinations and immunizations. With that, I do want to dive in to really talking about what kids can know to protect them from the current diseases like diabetes and heart disease. What should children know to help protect their family? The biggest causes of death in America are high blood pressure, diabetes, strokes, and those are all part of a group of diseases called chronic cardiometabolic conditions. What that means is that a combination of both the heart, cardio is heart, and metabolic, which is like diabetes and control of blood sugar, those originate from what we choose. They are not genetic. They are caused by inflammatory agents that are in smoke and in ultra-processed foods, such that what happens when you eat all of these ultra-processed foods, things that are foods that you don't just have around in your kitchen to make your home meals. They are things that are commercially produced. Those create inflammation in your body, and the inflammation is all over the body, not just in the pancreas, which creates insulin for protect from diabetes, or blood vessels. It's all blood vessels, everywhere that blood vessels go. So we are an accumulation of the choices that we make throughout our life, and children can do things to help their parents, to protect their parents
from the ravages of diabetes and high blood pressure and strokes and heart attacks by speaking up in their own household and understanding the choices that we are all making when we are choosing these ultra-processed foods and smoking, and how we can together help protect ourselves from that series of conditions that lead to kidney failure and dialysis and all kinds of awful things that we really don't have to deal with. There really are ways we can start early and protect ourselves, and even after we already have some of these conditions, we can make choices that prolong our life and our healthy life, our active life, as opposed to our invalid life.
Yeah, that's so important. And I love the fact that you framed this around kids being able to really be advocates. When I was a kid, my granddad smoked. He smoked most of his life, started in the military and, kind of carried it on. But and I do not recommend this. This is not, what to do. But I would throw his cigarettes in the pond because I wanted him to stop smoking. And I knew it was bad for his health. And eventually he did quit. It wasn't because I threw his, cigarettes in the pond. It was because he got real help. But I still was really an advocate for health. And I think that, thinking about what kids can really influence. We think parents are often shaping the household, but a lot of times it really is kids. I was a big environmentalist. I was a tree hugger, if you will, right? So I cared about things like wildfires and, ozone action day when you weren't supposed to fill up your tank because of the, I forget what it was at this time, but, the pollutants in the air. So kids really do make a difference. And the other thing I really want to highlight that you mentioned was even if you do get one of these diseases, you can still do things to improve your health and have a better quality of life. Can you share a few things about what you would recommend in that space?
So there are what's called optimal medical therapy that is a combination of very inexpensive drugs that focus on the root causes of diabetes and obesity and blood pressure elevation and cholesterol accumulation in the vessels. And these can be done without having to have invasive procedures like stents that are put with, stuck into arteries to open them up. It turns out that by taking these simple medicines that altogether cost about $8. Okay. they're now generics and they're not expensive, but you do need to stick to them religiously, and take them. And I think that a lot of our medical care in the U.S. is focused on rescue rather than prevention. It's like we are sending ambulances and fire trucks to the bottom of the hill to have a big net to catch somebody that's about to jump off the top of the mountain, instead of going to the top of the mountain and putting a fence there to keep them from jumping.
That's such a great visual.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that we can do more together. And, we've had high schoolers that have formed medical societies in 6 different high schools here in southern Nevada that are championing speaking up and learning more about what students can do to really understand life skills that prolong life and improve safety, and together to not only pursue their dream of becoming doctors and nurses and health professionals, but also helping their families, because, kids today often are taking care of grandma or uncle
That is so true. Or their
family
siblings.
members or their siblings
taking care of it. So
who have chronic illnesses.
What life-saving skills should they be learning? Like, I want to know kind of maybe if it's a certification, because I think that's really important.
Well, there are multiple certifications and multiple sources here in the Las Vegas area that can help people, and this starts with junior high and high school. Stop the bleed, for instance. If you happen upon an accident and someone is bleeding, what do?
Yeah.
That training is pretty straightforward to learn. If you're babysitting and the baby chokes, what do?
Right.
And there's training for that. If you're at a swimming pool and someone's not coming back up from the water, what do? And there are trainings for junior high and high school students for them to really step up. And there are multiple stories in the news of a 7-year-old that saved grandma's life because he made a phone call.
Right. So because I know everyone's like, okay, these are amazing, we need to know them. Where can these kids receive these trainings?
Well, there are a whole variety of resources in Southern Nevada. American Red Cross has a whole series of these trainings that are available. YMCA offers this training. University Medical Center offers Stop the Bleed training programs for all age groups. Libraries offer this, and often fire department personnel and other emergency medical transport specialists volunteer to do these trainings at libraries, and so there are multiple resources that are available. You just need to ask.
Okay.
You'll find out at the schools and at the libraries how to connect with these resources and to make it available.
Those are some fantastic organizations. Love all the ones you highlighted. And I just have to give a big shout out to all of our library districts, North Las Vegas Library District, Clark County Library District, all of them. Las Vegas Valley, I don't know all the names, but all the libraries are great. And they're such an underutilized resource, whether it's from technology or the classes that you're talking about. I know one of the libraries was actually giving out cuffs to check your own blood pressure. So there are so many things folks can do at the library district. I want to change subjects for just a moment as we're wrapping up our show today and move on to the getting some wheels in gear here. I mentioned while I was in DC, I had the chance to ride an electric bike, but I see them all the time now here in Las Vegas. And most of the time it's a teenager on them. So I want to ask first, is it safe for teenagers to even use these bikes?
It can be safe for teenagers to use these bikes, but when we're teenagers, we choose a lot of dangerous activities. It's like we want to prove we're a hot dog and we know how to really do crazy stuff. And what happens with electric bikes, that's now the number one cause of severe and fatal injuries for teenagers is electric bikes on sidewalks, and people who are walking on sidewalks who are hit by these electric bikes. So in Southern Nevada, the emergency departments are being overwhelmed with injuries from electric bike injuries. Some of these electric bikes are manipulated to go as fast as 50 miles an hour.
Whoa.
And so when that is going on, it's just unsafe. And I was driving home the other day, and a teenager drove by me on an electric bike doing wheelies on the main street.
Wow.
And, whether you have a helmet on or not, almost doesn't matter, because you're so much danger to those around you, not just to you. So we all need to grow up and be responsible and take care of ourselves because we can live longer, happier lives, but you have to take a few precautionary steps to make that possible.
And I'm just thinking back when I was a kid, I didn't know all the danger I put myself in, and I didn't have an electric bike, but I would take my regular two-wheel bike without a helmet, didn't know about it back then, but I would be going down like staircases and just, it was ridiculous. It was really ridiculous. So, thank you for kind of sharing that. And what should parents be telling their kids?
I think we all need to listen to our kids and encourage them to speak up and help them grow up. The technologies that are engaging teens 20 hours a day or 16 hours a day, where they just keep with repeating their own whatever the choice they have made in the past and exaggerating it, makes it so they are not relating to other children that are their age, and they're not developing relationships. So we need to encourage relationships not only within the family, but with their friends, and help them grow up and be mature citizens that contribute to our society.
Wow. Well, the show has gone by so quickly. We've got about 30 seconds left, but I can't leave without asking this final question. There's been a lot of talk in the news about Tylenol and autism. As a pediatrician, what would you say about this conversation?
Tylenol has not been proven scientifically to be a danger, and it really is the one safe medicine that moms can take if they have fever and they have the aches. So I think the scientific word is still out and unsettled about that. I realize that this is a political matter today, but scientifically we don't have proof yet that Tylenol is dangerous.
Well, Dr. Reeves, thank you so much for joining us on A Healthier Tomorrow. This was a great conversation. I learned a ton and really appreciate you just doing the work that you're doing here in the Valley. So we'll have to have you back again. All right.
Thank you very much.
This has been A Healthier Tomorrow. I am Will Rucker, and I want to thank you for joining me on today's program. As I always remind you, you are not just a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop, and what you do matters. So live compassionately and join us next time